Welcome to the meeting of the Board of Education. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the public are open to the public and media consistent of the Open Public Records Act, Chapter 231, Laws of 1975, and that an advance notice required therein has been provided. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Watchung, at which formal action has been taken. This meeting is being live streamed on the district website, where a recording of this meeting is also being posted. The public will have an opportunity to be heard as shown on the agenda at points of the meeting, provided for the public to address the board. Recording or photography other than private personal use requires consent of parents, guardians whose children may be included. Ms. Karen Bishop Johnson, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Aguilera. Here. Mrs. Amadeo.
Here.
Mr. Frage.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mrs. Harvey.
Here.
Mr. Ingracia.
Here.
Mrs. Jewett.
Here.
Mrs. Santos. Here. And Dr. Vinces Kua. Here. All here.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to call for Mrs. Gwen Thornton for a Board of Education self-assessment.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be back and nice to see all of you. I apologize for the late notice in getting it out to you, but I thought it was important to have all voices included. And so I sent you this morning, if you did not see it, a revision to the one that I sent last evening. My goal tonight in talking about the self-eval, I really just want to highlight two pieces of it, because I know you have a lot on your agenda to do in addition to goal setting, so I want to be mindful of your time. And that is looking at what you identified as the major challenges facing the district, and then what you identified as a Board of Education you think would be appropriate board goals. So if you look on the last page of your evaluation, the self-evaluation, what you will see is that I thought it was wonderfully interesting that you all really had the same perspectives when it came to identifying those challenges. The majority of them were around the budget, financial stability, making sure that you have a sustainable financial footing moving forward. I know that that has been a challenge for this past year, but becomes increasingly important to ensure that moving forward, you continue along that path of sustainability around your financial resources. Also, equally as important was around academics, around the curriculum and instructional program, professional development, transitions for students. Those were the two pieces that you really highlighted, and that, in fact, the majority of you all agreed upon. The other piece was around moving forward with the strategic plan, which I know was one of the district goals this past year, but in light of everything that was taking place, it was not able to really begin, but continuing that goal perhaps would be wise moving forward. So those were the highlights from your board self-evaluation around the challenges of your district. In terms of board goals, the areas that there seemed to be some consensus around was roles and responsibilities, understanding the difference between oversight and micromanagement. Again, doing perhaps a review around ethics and confidentiality, and then around finance, having a better understanding as individual board members around what those financial reports actually mean, so that you have a greater comfort level when you're doing the budget and when you're approving the financial reports on a monthly basis. So those were the kinds of things that came up, along with perhaps continuing to have one of the 3 goals or 4 goals that you had this year, moving forward next year around treating each other with civility, respect, and kindness at the board table. So those were the 4 areas from the self-eval that jumped out that a lot of you talked about those very same things. And so those are things that I think you need to think about as we engage in goal setting this evening. Questions? I mean, we can go over it in great detail, but I think for the sake of everything you have to do tonight, we need to focus more on goal setting moving forward, if that's okay with the board.
Yes.
Okay. So, for those of you who have not done this before, annual goal setting is a process that most boards engage in. We did it late last year just because you had a new superintendent starting and with the transition. So it's really wonderful to sort of get back on schedule to be doing it in this timeline in the summer. And it's really about education and keeping your students at the heart of what you do. Your major focus and the time that you spend should be predominantly spent around curriculum and instruction, what students are learning, what they're doing, what their needs are. There are other responsibilities, obviously, the boards of education have. However, keeping that focus is really a critical piece to the success of the district. So as we begin to think about next year, it's really, as we set the course for student success, what have we accomplished this past year? What needs additional focus moving forward? And what are our priorities that reflect our core values around what is important to be doing in the school district? So in terms of goal development, just for those of you who may be new, in understanding the district between district goals and board goals, district goals refer to all of those pieces that boards of education are responsible for: program, instruction, staff development, facilities, finance. They're around the operations. The Board of Education says what they would like to see happen, but the how it happens, the people responsible for making it happen, are your administrators, your educational professionals. Board goals are around your processes and procedures, what you as a board can do to be more effective in supporting and having your administration achieve the district goals, and how you can be more effective as a Board of Education. And we'll talk a little bit about those. Board goals are owned by the board. They're your responsibility to work on. They're not the administrative's responsibility to work on the board goals. That's on you. The district goals are the responsibility of the administration to make happen. The board goals are your responsibility to make happen. Okay? So there is a cycle to this, and as I said a little while earlier, we got a little off cycle, but we are now back to setting the goals in the June timeframe. That allows the summer for your administration, as well as your board principals and supervisors, to work on action plans to implement the district goals, which gives them that time when there aren't students in the building every day with buses running and bells ringing, to really have that opportunity. And then over the course of the board year, you're going to measure progress as you move forward by receiving updates around what is the progress that's being made around those district goals, and establishing those dates to receive updates, so that it's not a once-a-year thing where we look at it when we do the superintendent's evaluation, but we know through the course of the year. Having district goals is a wonderful way to communicate with your community, with your staff. These are the board's priority. This is what our focus is on. This is how we determine what the budget priorities are, because one of those very important pieces is if you haven't provided the financial wherewithal for your administration to accomplish the goals, how can you hold them accountable? And so while it is off cycle from the budget, by setting them now and thinking about that as you move forward to the 25-26 school budget year, because 24-25 is in place, you'll be able to continue those priorities until the following June, okay? So, and again, sometimes there are things that may pop up that can take you off of your goals. Typically, they are things that you don't usually have happen. Natural disasters. When Hurricane Sandy hit, for example, there were a lot of districts that had to relocate their students. And so progress on district goals that year got pushed back while they relocated students, put them in new buildings, repaired from the hurricane, came back. But again, you can always revisit your goals, and if an adjustment is necessary, you can make that determination, which is what those districts would do, okay? So they become the objective criteria against which to measure and evaluate your superintendent, the progress that are made toward those district goals. So they're very important, okay? Why do we set them? for equitable policy development, for moving closer to the achievement of what your vision is for the future of the Watchung School District. Again, it establishes what the priorities are. It also should provide for implementation of curricular programs and professional development. And again, it provides for that periodic evaluation of where we are. Do we need to recalibrate and adjust if necessary? I know that that happened this past summer when you needed to look at where the budget concerns were and how you address that, and the transportation issues that popped up that took, I know, a great deal of time to resolve. And so sometimes there are things that may happen in a district that could take you potentially down a different road. Okay? They also provide for effective communication and collaboration among your board members, your administrators, your staff, your students in your community. And then, of course, they provide for that accountability factor through the CSA, your superintendent's evaluation. So we know through research that clear goals for student achievement and classroom instruction based on high expectation for the achievement of all students is something that helps to drive districts forward. And that's an incredibly important factor as you think about goals for next year, okay? So what should your focus be? What will most dramatically accelerate student learning and address perhaps opportunity gaps for students? For your educational program, to make sure you're meeting their needs, both their social emotional needs as well as their mental health needs. Again, you know, what data do you have that identifies an improvement focus perhaps for next year? And what will help all students to be more successful? And then again, aligning your financial resources and budget to support that student achievement. Also, it's a little cut off here, but developing 21st century skills. In addition to academic achievement, thinking about those other skills that you want all of your students to have in terms of being collaborative thinkers, critical thinkers, collaborative problem solvers, digitally literate, civically responsible, to love learning, to make sure they're moral, ethical, empathic, and compassionate human beings. Those are all the kinds of things that 21st century leaders are going to need to know as they move forward. Again, make sure that they are effective communicators, that they can work together, that they're creative, that they have time management skills, all of the kinds of things that they learn through the educational process throughout the year that you may not be thinking about, but are as important in many ways as academic skills are important for students to have too. Okay? So we're going to just take a moment and review the progress from this year, and then perhaps hearing from your administrative team what they believe would be helpful to continue for the following year. So here were the goals. I know you're just finishing up on the SUP eval, and you saw these goals, but I put them in here: developing and approving a sustainable, balanced budget, which you did. Obviously, that was achieved, so you can feel very good about that. Finding solutions to address and solve transportation concerns. I know that that's been an ongoing process, and I do believe you have pieces in place to address those concerns, and beginning the development of a strategic plan. So I think that that may be one that you want to carry forward because you didn't have an opportunity this past year to have that happen. Just because of the press of time and the budgetary concerns and the transportation and so forth. But that's certainly something that you may want to be thinking about. So, okay, goals can be carried over from the preceding year. I would tell you, especially in the area of teaching and learning or academic achievement, that goals oftentimes are multi-year. They're not all accomplished in 1 year necessarily. Education is developmental. It takes time. And for example, I know a lot of you have pointed out the need to have more up-to-date programming and materials and textbooks. But that's a goal in and of itself. If you want higher levels of student achievement, you have to do the research and the work to make that happen. If you continue along the same path, that you perhaps have been on without any significant changes, you may not see the kind of growth over time that you want to see happen. And so I would implore you to think about it from that particular piece as well, okay? So, Watchung District goals for 2024-25. I would ask Julie if you have any thoughts, and I know you have your administrators here. They're back there hiding, being careful. But we're glad you're here because you work with the kids every day, you know what their needs are, and you have a perspective that Board of Education members can't possibly have. And so,
Gwen, what are you asking about? That you want a recap of progress on this year's goals?
I'm asking you if there are any you want to see carried over from the preceding year, and then perhaps what you and your administrative team have been thinking would be the focus for the coming year, and if they want to come up and...
So I think that strategic plan piece, right, is critical because the strategic plan is the overarching umbrella, right, that everything else comes under. The district goals, the board goals, the building goals, whatever those goals. So to me, that goal 3 would be one that I think should continue. Gwen said something, I actually wrote it down because it resonated with me. To develop and approve a sustainable, balanced budget was this year's goal, but what I wrote down that I thought was really important, along those lines, we spent a lot of time in the budget talking about what we needed to restore, what we needed to add, what we wanted to maintain. I know I can't see you guys over the podium, but you came to 2 different curriculum meetings talking about all the things that had been cut, all of the programs that were cut short, and professional development that was interrupted. To me, this budget goal needs a little pivot, right? We have identified a lot of things that we need to do. This budget just keeps us going, right? We didn't add very much, if you remember. But of those things we identified, and you guys feel free to come up and chat in the microphone, but of the things that we identified that we said were really important, if you go back and look at the district goals, there were really, and building goals for each, Bayberry and Valley View, you're looking at professional development around problem-based learning, researching a new math textbook because ours is so out of date. We know English language arts, right, has changed dramatically and we're getting new standards, and we put the curriculum writing back in to be able to look at all of those things. So it's not really developing and approving the balanced budget, it's looking at what we've identified and understanding, and believe me, I am the most grateful, right? We passed that budget April 25th. Passing the budget doesn't change test scores, right? It just doesn't, as much as I would love that. All of those things that Nicole and Denise and Karen I've identified in the meetings and that have been reported, in the minutes in our meetings, those have to happen in order to move to that next level. So I'm not, when I look at this budget goal, yes, it's critical, right? We have to continue down that sustainable path, but we also have to look at how do we do the things we identified. You don't just buy a textbook, it takes research and piloting. You don't just take the new ELA standards and say, okay, these look pretty good, right? We have a lot of research and work to do. And again, feel free to join in. I see your thumbs up, but I know you guys.
Thoughts, the board, what do you think? So what I wrote from listening to you is to develop a sustainable budget that supports identified curricular changes and implements program initiatives and the professional development to support such.
Wow. You did well.
That's it.
I don't even think I could have said that back.
Hey, years of practice of writing
kidding.
goals.
Did it
Thoughts?
sound, you guys, yes?
Can you read it one more time?
Sure. Sure, I'd be happy to. Develop a sustainable budget that supports identified curricular changes and implements programmatic initiatives and the professional development to support both. I said such, but I like both better.
That would support things so general as develop block schedule in middle school, looking at different curriculum and resources, as well as the professional development for teachers, building in more professional time for them in their PLCs, which was also a building goal for both of us, things like that, correct?
Correct. And so what I would tell you, and I would tell the board, is often the discrete steps in the action plans to achieve it would be outlined there, to include such things as reviewing the schedule and looking at different ways, whether it's block scheduling, whether it's whatever kinds of initiatives you think would be beneficial for the students' learning. And that would be included in the, thank you, that would be included in the action plans that you would be putting together, those very specific pieces. But this is just meant to broadly identify what it is the goal it would be.
And I know I've said this before, and again, please, any of the three of you want to step in. It takes a change to make a change. We have to do something different if you want a different outcome, right? We can't use the 10-year-old textbook and think we're going to meet targets in math. We can't not upgrade English language arts, right? And think we're going to suddenly accomplish something new. We need to be able to make that change to accomplish what I think we all want to accomplish, right? Which is improved outcomes academically.
So does this become our academic achievement goal from a planning perspective, or do we
Good ask.
also want to have a goal around academic achievement for this year, knowing, everything that Dr. Glazer has said?
You have to have one that would obviously be a student achievement goal long-term. I mean, it's not the short-term piece that you're talking about. You can have more than one. But you shouldn't have more than 3 or 4 at most district goals, because then your efforts become so diluted it's impossible to achieve those in a given time frame.
And remember, this team, you're looking at our entire implementation team.
Danielle, are you going to work for the district now? You're going to come teach? No, but all I was going to say is anything if you for academic achievement, we're not getting any more out of this budget. So yes, we're going to tweak. We're always looking to improve, but we're really not going to be able to do anything that's going to change drastically this upcoming year. That's something that we would have to really work on and budget for and do the research. So I would stay away from something that was specifically measurable like that, just for now.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think we should at least give it another year. And then if we build stuff into the budget that then helps support programs, then you can put a district goal on there to try to measure that success, right? So that's more specific to academics.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree with that. From our training through the NJSBA, they stress the importance of having SMART goals in the training material, and this is what I spoke of when we were approving our goals last year. So I kind of lean more towards what Danielle was saying, maybe have a separate goal that's more directed on how to look at building the next year's budget, and having a separate one related more to academic achievement.
Sometimes the SMART piece, the specific, measurable, attainable, time-bound piece, finds expression in the action plans as opposed to in the actual goal statement itself. And that is something, that we have this, I will tell you, we've had this debate internally between field service reps and general staff, because people coming from the business world deal in SMART goals all the time, which I understand. However, you're dealing with human beings, students, and education is developmental. So progress and growth for kids comes differently at different age levels, and that's not to say that you shouldn't measure student achievement or growth, but perhaps looking at a growth model over time, or identifying a specific cohort and looking at their growth over time, or measuring students against their individual performance over time, and using multiple measures as opposed to just one standardized measurement, such as the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, would have greater validity. Again, that's one measure of student performance, but there's a lot of different ways to measure student performance that teachers use both internally within the classroom. They're not all, quote, tests. A lot of times they can be oral recitations. I mean, there are a whole host of different ways, having students do projects, portfolios. Again, there are a lot of different ways to measure student progress beyond just the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, which I am not diminishing their importance. It's a measure that the state requires, obviously, around the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. However, given that it's up to all of you, but I would ask you to think about it in those terms as well, and really looking at the growth model of student progress and achievement, as opposed to looking at some of those standard, in other words, individualizing and personalizing education to be able to look at where Johnny started here at the beginning of the year and where he finishes on multiple measures of performance rather than just one standardized assessment.
Well, could we do both? Do that?
You certainly can, but
Something objective.
you certainly can do that. And I would encourage you, if you're going to think about an academic goal, that might be a pure, I see the one above as an academic goal, actually, because you're talking about improving the curriculum, improving what you're offering to students in terms of programs, initiatives, personalized learning, experiential learning, STEAM, STEM, all of those kinds of things that I don't think have been looked at very closely here in quite a while. And so from my perspective as a former teacher, that's as important as saying, well, you have to reach this level on a particular standardized assessment. But again, that's not to deny the importance of looking at all of those pieces collectively and using multiple measures as opposed to a single indicator.
And would
And Gwen,
benchmarks be a problem? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Gwen, we could, if Mr. Ingracia wants a SMART goal, we could make one based on the professional development and the support and the materials that we offer the staff also, correct? Okay.
Thank you. And at the last meeting that we discussed these goals, I did suggest a goal of increasing student achievement by raising academic proficiency in math and ELA by 5% across grades 3 through 8, as measured by the 2024 at the time, now 2025 NJSLA. So I would still be for that goal, but I guess what I'm saying is that we have had in training from the NJSBA that the goals be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time sensitive. And so while I do understand that that can be detailed in the action plans, I think that we should still strive, and I appreciate that suggestion, to have the goal itself be clearly a SMART goal. So that's my...
I just wanted to ask that question, because for me, we've had this conversation, so this, whatever goal, develop and approve a sustainable balanced budget, not a SMART goal, right? But what is written into is the line on the action plan, what's the outcome for that, right? realistic Board of Education approved tentative budget March 18th, board approved budget April 25th, staff reappointments May 9th. So specific, measurable, right? Time-bound, realistic. So it is meeting all of the indicators of the acronym. I think and I will just repeat it, more for me, I think, than anybody, to achieve what you're asking, what are we changing to get that outcome? That I'm still not, right? Like, I understand, I think we all want that kind of outcome. I want that kind of outcome. But I don't think it just happens, right? So when we're talking about investing in professional development or piloting a textbook or writing curriculum to new whatever it is, I understand the change. What is it that we're going to do differently, right? Because the test's already been taken. The measure you want to use, the kids have already taken the test. We're going to get those outcomes in November. We have done nothing different, right? So I don't understand, for me, if we have that as a goal, we perhaps already failed before we started, is my challenge.
We need to develop the plan first.
And
then we
I
measure
think
the
you
success.
have to, it's not even just the plan, it's the measure you want to use has already happened. The students have already taken the exam, and we did nothing differently to impact that outcome. That's what I'm struggling with.
Right, because the test scores are from the year before, guys. I mean, it's like holding Julie to a standard that she's never going to be able to meet. And I agree with her. I mean, if we want to put in academics in the way Gwen's suggesting it, whereas if we're implementing new things, like we're going to develop a program or whatnot, those things can be measured, and those are still academic goals. It's just to put a percentage on something, I feel, is unfair to our superintendent when nothing, I agree, and nothing.
More worried about your principal.
And even the students too. I mean, what have we changed for them? So that's why I suggested that we should potentially give another year so that they have time to work with us to develop what things they want to implement. And then we have to give those things time to actually work too, right? To see how we're going to then see the change in academics, right? And if everybody's so concerned about test scores, I just hope everybody realizes that's not the entire child. I mean, you can have a child who doesn't do well on standardized tests, but can play 3 different instruments, can speak 4 different languages. So, I mean, that doesn't necessarily explain the whole child. So I just want, everybody's kind of focused on test scores, test scores. That's a snapshot in this kid's life. And it's not like Gwen's saying, it's not that it's not important. There's just so many other things that happen in a school day. There's so many other programs that kids are involved in that should not be ignored just because people want to make sure that our test scores go up 10%.
But it sounds
And
like
I'm not saying that I don't want the scores to go up.
No, everybody wants the scores to go up.
But I'm
It's just we
saying
got to
you have
get to that
Right,
point.
you have to do something to impact that. And again, I kind of only see your heads, but I see you're dying to say something.
I just wanted to remind everybody that for the past 4 years I've been here, because of budget concerns, we've cut programs. The students went in middle school from having a double period of language arts to a single period this year. We've cut staffing. So I think it would be very unfair to judge our children and our teachers on what has been cut for years. I'd rather us start building back and putting back the things we need before we start creating a specific academic goal. I think our goal should be to try to restore what we've lost and put things in place that will support our kids and our teachers now.
That sounds great. I'm just bringing up what was discussed, that maybe you have a separate budgetary goal and a separate academic goal. And you know, if the 5% is a sticking point for this year, it's really just the example proposed goal that was read to us did not have a lot of the specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-sensitive
But
elements.
that
to it.
would be included in the action plan against which you're going to measure the superintendent's performance. So I don't quite understand the hang-up of not having it in the language of the goal, as long as it is included in the action plan.
Well, because
right?
our
So-
training is
so
to
wait,
have
just
the goals
give
be
me one
smart.
more. Give me 1 second,
But you can have a
Anthony.
SMART goal without the 5%.
Right, that's what I'm saying. And also, maybe the academic goal is a touch point that brings a lot of other elements into this discussion. The other example I gave the last time we had a board meeting discussing the goals was about the transportation. So maybe this is a better example. Because I felt that the transportation goal was a bit vague. And so I had suggested, rather than how we had it worded, to say plan and execute a proactive and fiscally responsible transportation plan that addresses the safety, accuracy, and efficiency concerns of multiple stakeholders by August 2024. And so here, that change wasn't made. I felt like that was a bit lackluster, but sure enough, I think that I wouldn't say that the action plan was inadequate or that we weren't making good progress on it. So I'm not, it's just, I think that we should try to have the goals be something measurable and
I think you're.
time sensitive. I
I think you're 1,000% right. So read your suggestion, because I want to read something back to you.
Okay. Well,
Only because the outcome for that goal, right, in the action plan, the goal says, just so everybody knows, sorry, we're talking about things you guys at home can't hear. The goal is find solutions to solve transportation concerns. You're right, not a SMART goal on its face, right? But the outcome, consistent, efficient transportation plan for the 24-25 school year that addresses coordination, route timing, and safety. So not that different. Our language is really not that different. It's just where it appears, I think.
Right, and that's where I think when we have these only 3 or 4 goals, we should try to make those as
We
clearly
couldn't come
SMART
to
goals as
this,
possible.
Right? I couldn't have come to this outcome without the action steps, is what I guess I'm saying.
Sure.
I just don't understand what you're not getting. I mean, we put the language for the goal, and then there's steps in place in order to try to achieve that goal. Do you not understand the difference between the two, or that that one complements the other? Like, you just keep asking for more language to put in the specific goal itself.
Right.
Then do we just not put that in the action? Like, I don't understand what what the hiccup is here.
Well, it's just that I don't think vague goals help our district, and I think that having them through our NJSBA training, being SMART goals, being a recommendation, we should try to word them without any impact on the action plan, but to have them be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time sensitive.
Okay, but to measure them, that's what the action plan is. I mean, we were all able to measure the goals that were set
And
for these past couple months. I mean, those are SMART goals, so I still don't understand what you're.
So if you
You're
look at
saying.
the sample, Anthony, seriously, here of an action plan, it would outline the major activities, include board or staff who was involved, depending upon what the particular goal was, what resources were necessary, what are the timelines for accomplishments, and then what are the indicators of success. So if it's about communicating to the community a specific SMART goal, and I will tell you that your emphasis on SMART is you are attributing it to NJSBA, and I thank you for that, however misplaced it may be, because most of the goals that we set are not SMART goals, because we understand that those pieces find expression in the action plan, and by making it a less specific goal, you provide a broader opportunity for your administration to develop those plans that will most specifically meet the need that may be broader than the goal that you want to write.
I have something specific that might be helpful. So the test scores from this year talked about certain areas where we did better, where we did worse. Perhaps we can, make sure the administration is looking at, through their ideas and planning, addressing some of those issues, so that we can then be focused on measuring that later. Can we use the older test scores as a way to make this a SMART goal and make sure that we're going in the right direction?
I
of
think-
Can I just, oh gosh, that's so loud. So sorry.
I was going to say, yeah.
Finally ready to say something. Yeah, so Danielle, we actually use the test scores and other points of data at the very beginning of the school year for PLCs. The teachers analyze multiple sources of data to identify weaknesses that they want to build their own SGOs on, and then team goals that they work on. So we do that. So again, it's built in, and their SGOs are SMART goals. For an example, I have my teachers do a reading goal and a math goal, and like I said, they have to look at multiple points of data, and they pick out those weakest pieces to really target.
So that can fill out the goal. We make sure that it's SMART based on that.
I think we're looking for
That makes
more
sense.
objective things to look at, and that's a hard thing to do. I do understand, Dory, I understand you were saying that it's not just academics, percentages and such like that. There's more to the child's growth. I understand that. Teachers know that, and that's what they try to get across to the parents when they come in to talk about how the child is doing. But I think we just need a little bit more specifics that we could work towards. Everything sounds right, but I really need something to compare to. Like, say we want to compare to this past year's scores, and you're going to look at, compare to, how they do next year. We'll see how they're doing. Could we do something in line with both the subjective and the objective part?
It's not that it's not objective, it's that you're not tying it into one specific measurement, which, again, to Julie's point, things haven't changed anything. So if you use this year as the baseline to look at next year, when the programmatic changes may not have been implemented yet, it's going to it's going to set the district up for failure. And I don't see any purpose to that. The idea of a goal is, again, if you want to go back to being SMART, right, it should be attainable. And if you continue to do the same things because you haven't implemented the kind of changes that need to be implemented programmatically to address those areas of shortfall in performance for students, and the teachers are already doing that in terms of using multiple measures for their SGOs, right? Looking at ELA and looking at mathematics, which are the two most important tested subjects. They're already doing that. However, looking for an overall score for every student when they're doing it individually for students within their classrooms, right? Mm-hmm. That's the important piece that gets done that you don't necessarily see.
And if I may, unless Phyllis, you had an additional thought. I think what I'm hearing so far are two things. One is that we're anchoring on this goal setting and trying to operationalize it. And it can be done whether it's SMART or whether through an action plan. So I think it's not necessarily something to get tied up in. The second piece of what I'm hearing is that really we are all aligned with the fact that we want our students to continue growing and thriving. There's multiple things already happening as is, but we have to be clear about the sequencing around how that happens. And if we just simply say we want academic achievement, that is like the end goal. We need to be clear that there has to be something developmental along the way. So if in fact we want to get here, which is to increase scores in multiple ways, then we're really going to have to do something at the front end. And what I'm hearing is that it's building, the selection of curriculum and doing the research behind that. I'm hearing the programmatic changes that need to happen. So that is more of a feasible goal than being able to say simply 5% increase in test scores. I think that's what we want, or just minimal. But before doing that, we can't think of it in just 1 year. We're going to need to take a few other steps to being able to get there, and then our district will be able to see the incremental growth and change. Beyond that, I don't think it's not a fair practice, one, and there's going to be a lot of discouragement on top of that, because we're seeing phenomenal work already happening with both our schools right now, and I think that's just not the proper developmental way in order to achieve what we want. So that's just my perspective at this point in time, and I think that if we just take some time to really think sequentially, what do we need to do to ultimately raise scores, we're going to have a feasible goal for 2024 and 2025.
I completely agree. We can't start at the end. We need to start at the beginning.
I appreciate your words there, Jen, also because I was under the impression that things were improving this year and changing. And so that's where to say that nothing's changed this year, it's been a full school year. I thought things were changing for the better also. And to your point, Gwen, I mean, if it's not the NJSBA, I guess this is the New Jersey Department of Education Collaborative Teams Toolkit with sample SMART goals that I was looking at for an example, for elementary example. It says for the current reality, last year, 85% of our students, this is just an example from there, it's not applying to our district, 85% of our students met or exceeded the target score of 3 of our state's writing prompt in May. And then the SMART goal, this year, at least 90% of our students swim meet will exceed our target goal. So they were giving, and again, maybe I'm not arguing for the 5%, but what I'm looking at is also if maybe you could explain the process to us, that we're having this meeting to discuss our goals, and the district goals will then be voted on at the Thursday meeting. And then we have our board goals,
Right.
and the board will develop the action plan for
Correct.
their board goals. But when it comes to the action plan being developed for the goals that we set for the district, that the board will not, what role will the board have in that action plan?
It's done by your administration. They're responsible for the how, so they are generally shared with the board so that you can see what they look like. They're not required to be approved, although some districts will approve them, but it's not required to approve them.
Right, and so that's all I'm saying is as a board, our major input is in our suggestions for the district goals. We're not going to be down to the level of the action plan as much as we could suggest these goals.
So, and Anthony, you are spot on in what you're trying to accomplish. I don't want to take away from what you're saying. The goals that you were reading are typically, so remember, strategic plan, district goals, building goals, department goals. So when, I think it was Denise, was talking about taking the test scores, right? And going into PLCs and looking at, growth and how to make change. When you read one of those goals, 85% of students will be proficient, I'm trying to remember, but proficient on the May assessment. That could be the iReady assessment. That could be, reading and writing workshop demonstration, authentic assessment. There's nothing out of line. I think what, and I am trying to listen and process it so we can get on the same page. We have made great progress this year. I could not be more proud of what we have been able to accomplish this year, and I'm looking forward Thursday night to that year in review. Do I think we have continued our professional learning to improve teacher practice, instruction, whatever, we said we were going to do? No. Did we look at our math textbook or curriculum or write curriculum, right, over the year that can be implemented for next year? No, we just are adding that. So I think that's maybe the difference when I'm listening. Yes, to everything you're saying, but to what Dr. Vince's Kua said, that sequence. Now we have to write the curriculum. We have to identify a textbook or pilot that. We have to train staff on that new curriculum or the instructional practices around whatever, problem-based learning or individualization or whatever we're doing. Without those steps, if you will, I don't know. I think we might have accidental improvement, right? Because we're consistent. I want to see us have real change to practice, real change to outcomes. I guess that's, I hear.
Yeah, and look, it was just the first reading of the goal, so my my input is I'd like to see it be more specific.
I don't know if this would be
Attainable, relevant in time.
a district goal, but just with the amount of HIBs that we've seen, and sometimes the main topic of what a lot of those HIBs are, I don't know if this could be factored in somewhere to a goal or just like an action item or something, but just for us to know from you and the principals, is there something that needs to be developed and identified in certain, SEL or guidance programs to try to help lower the amount of HIBs that we're getting? And then, maybe that could be it on its own, is that those things are being identified, especially if we have to incorporate certain programs or something in the budget for the next year. Like, I think that's important as well, just for the amount that we've gotten. It seems like a lot. I don't have the data in front of me. The principals and you would know more than us. But, obviously during COVID, we didn't have much of anything because kids weren't together. And the more and more they came together, right, it seems as if they're on the rise. So I don't know if it's something that you see in your buildings and you're identifying, but I think that maybe should be a focus if that's what you guys think should be a focus too.
I mean, we talk about this a lot. I mean, to be honest, some of it is just having more people to help cut things off and be proactive, where a lot of times we can't. We're just reactive, like a vice principal, or sometimes I feel like sometimes we need 3 counselors or psychologists or all these people. So we do see that, and but sometimes there's just not enough people, like I said, to take care of the small problems before they get bigger.
I think it's really important, right? I don't think I can.
I don't know if it needs to be a district goal, but
no, but
it's
I'm
definitely something that we've all seen,
right?
yeah.
And again, we talked about strategic planning. I would advocate, it's your decision, but I advocate to keep a strategic planning goal. I think those conversations, those big conversations, identifying focus areas like that, because it's over a long period of time, are important, right? Because what you're saying is, okay, the district's going to create or establish or evaluate, right? We're going to look at those programs or look at those policies that are supporting, right, health or mental health or well-being or whatever that is of our students and, frankly, our staff. So if by doing that, right, we need to increase whatever that is, how we're addressing that, right? then that becomes a focus and a year-over-year plan. Not that we don't need that. To Denise's point, look, we just made we restored the counselor to full-time, we made the social worker, like we are mindful. And I think it's, again, I think that it is critical. I think, again, that the conversation, the same as with that, with the health and wellness piece, I'll call it that, social, emotional, or mental health learning, is not that different than curriculum and programs. All the same words. I would use all of those same words, right? We need to be evaluating our existing offerings. We need to look at how we're doing curriculum development or implementing instruction and best practices. We need to create maybe and deliver assessments that give us the information that we want. Phyllis's point, right? If it's not just the SLA, that's the two S's, sorry, it's out of my mind. But if it's not just that, and if it's not just our iReady, should we be doing more professional learning on formative assessments or on performance assessments, right? How do we ensure that relevant learning experience for all students? So I see the district goal, like I can distill a district goal out of that, but I also distill a bigger strategic plan conversation. So to Anthony's point, that's specific, right? Like I think they're important things we have to look at, but if it's a district goal, it has to be more distilled or more specific.
Okay.
That's me, right? Could you read, again, what you came up with so far from everybody?
Develop a strategic plan in the 24-25 school year, right? That's a pretty specific, I mean,
No, that's fine.
Right?
That is.
So just develop a sustainable budget that supports identified curricular changes and implements program initiatives and the professional development to support both.
I think that is
Like
specific.
that.
You're saying we want to do this, we need a budget that supports it, right? That's,
I like it.
Are you good with the two goals?
I am.
I think we have to. We almost should be doing this next year, after we see what's going on.
we have to do it every year.
Yeah, goal setting occurs every year. I mean, it's part of that cycle, right? I'll be back and next year we can debate the same
Something to look at.
piece, right? Are you good? Everyone is comfortable with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then we get to move on?
No, same comments as before. Is there another goal? Is there room for another goal? Is that what we're moving on to? Or is that the?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if someone has a thought, this is your opportunity to.
I would like to just put forward in the process of, before there was a referendum, there was a long-range facilities plan. And a lot of that work got rolled into the referendum.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there should be a goal to, and I'm not sure I've seen any updates that this is occurring. So I think that there should be a renewal of the long-range facilities plan because,
So there is,
yeah.
but that's
It's required.
Right.
So I'm going to see if I can find it, because I know Frank Bowlby, the architect, had to submit that, maybe, I don't know where, but I'm going to look, because I'm sure that we have
Review
an
it.
email about it.
Yeah, and to look for strategies, to address them as quickly and efficiently as possible.
It may already be
Hold on, I'm looking.
because it's required. I don't know if you want to also list it as one of your goals, because we already have to do it. We don't have a choice.
Right.
Thoughts? I mean, it's a requirement to annually update your long-range facility plan. The Department of Ed requires it to be inputted, so I'm assuming that if you're doing construction projects, referendum projects. The architect is in the process of doing that, if he hasn't already done
I
it.
think it's, I haven't, I'm not doing a whole search, I will do that, but just what came up quickly in March was Frank going to Karen and Denise, looking at their numbers of classrooms. He needed to update self-contained preschool. He needed to update all to fourth grade, so that was Bayberry, and which classrooms and which rooms. I see Denise answered that. He also, and I'm sorry, I'm not finding it as maybe Frank, maybe it's just long-range facility plan, but I am almost sure that he had to have filed that. I'm almost sure, but I'm going to find it for
In
you.
the past, we had those facility assessments with the photos and the description of the work that needed to be done. And that,
I don't know what that
Add
is.
into part of
I
the,
haven't had that as a part of a long-range facility.
right, so it's, those items were mostly covered by the referendum, so maybe there could be a new survey taken to take a look at some of that work. And maybe it is part of the strategic plan. I know that we anticipate getting additional demographic data from our regionalization study grant, and so that could be part of it also. Thank you.
I'm going to find it, Anthony. It's going to drive me crazy.
Well, we can do that offline too. I
That's
just
what I'm
wanted
saying.
to,
I will find it, I promise.
Thank you.
Because I remember.
Thoughts from the board? Is that something you're interested in carrying as a goal?
If we have to do it every year, then I don't see why it needs to be a district goal. It could be something that we work on in committee or just look at in committee.
It's up to the board. It's not.
Well, this way we make sure we do it.
You have to do it. It's a CUSAC requirement. It's a state requirement.
I think it would just be the level of detail and depth, and like I said, maybe additional information being brought into the study. But that's fine. That was my other suggestion. If there's, we're still only at 2, right?
We are.
was a
The
good
only,
suggestion.
the only thought I have on that, Anthony, is that it may actually, you're probably not going to like this, but I would suggest that's probably better served for next year, only because you will have completed all of the referendum projects.
From your mouth to God's ears, there's wood to knock on.
I'm sorry. So that then you really may need to look at, okay, here's where we've gotten to. Now, what else is there? Here's what's in the long-range facility plan. It's already proposed, right? Because you've updated it from this year. But by next June, you will have completed, I would think, all of the referendum projects.
And it ties in also to the budgeting goal in that what can we start putting towards our capital reserves?
Well, that'll be in the long-range facility plan because it will include things that weren't included in the referendum will still be there, right? Whether it was rekeying a building or, you know, different kind of safety and security, whatever you had identified that wasn't put into that referendum will still be carried in that long-range facility plan. The stuff that you didn't do doesn't disappear.
Right, there wasn't much.
that you couldn't do, right, will be carried forward anyway. So, okay. All right, unless someone has another thought, I'm going to move along to board goals. Okay. So,
What's the third, do we have a third goal? Did I miss it?
pardon me?
We had 2.
I was going to say, did I miss a district?
just the 2.
You have 2.
Fine, it's fine, just asking.
I think,
No, so my question was, do we typically have 3?
Some districts have 2, some have 3, some have 4. There's no requirement other than the one state requirement is that you have an academic goal which this addresses. And that's the one requirement that the state has for goal setting.
Yeah.
And I can tell you I can make almost any goal an academic. No, I'm kidding, but You can, because most things are tied to academics, whether it's social emotional learning or whether it's even a facilities goal, because if you're improving your facilities, adding science labs, space for small group instruction, you're improving in a real way academic performance ultimately. Okay, so board goals are around what you can do to be more effective. Typically, they're around policy development, ensuring comprehensive curriculum and instruction. Communications is always a big piece, both internal and external. Enhancing your governance skills and performance, whether it's professional development that the board, additional professional development that you want, supporting the administration to achieve district goals, and then addressing those things you identified as board challenges, okay? So, again, we start with looking at what you had this year, and then what you think may need to be carried over or expanded for the upcoming year, okay? So here were the 23-24 board goals. To find and appoint a new board member to fill the vacancy. You did that, successfully completed, achieved. Fostering a more positive and supportive working environment. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but you can see that. And provide support within our role as board members for the district's strategic plan. Again, I think you can carry that one forward because you will be doing that for the next school year.
Can we just thank them and let them go so they don't have to stay? So they don't have to stay for the board goals? Can you just thank them and let them go?
Thank you.
Thank you
Have a good
guys
night,
for
everyone.
being here and for your input. Thank you, I'm sorry.
I'll work on putting it in later.
No, don't worry. Go. Don't do what you have to do.
That's why I was going to wait. So I wouldn't have to struggle.
There you go. Okay.
All right, we're back in business. Okay. So again, do you want to carry the third goal?
I'm in favor.
I
Yes.
think would make
Absolutely.
good sense.
It means.
And
I
then,
still think we need the second goal too, especially since election season's coming up.
Water and
We know how it gets in this town.
almost every town these days, unfortunately.
I don't know. I like the idea of board members requesting to get more maybe professional development in the financial part of understanding the budget. I know that NJSBA offers specific trainings in that, and I didn't know if the board agreed or if it could be grouped into more of a professional development goal and then adding in there things to help train the board on understanding confidentiality, understanding the relationship between the superintendent and the board, all those things. If that could be rolled in as action items or measurable items underneath a goal that deals with professional development.
If that's what the board wants, you certainly can do that.
That's a good idea, Dory. I like that.
We've had a goal like that before, and it helps. And then we as a board work a lot more with Gwen to try to either bring her in or people from NJSBA to come in and train us at our meetings. Or she's really good in making sure to let us know if there's something that's coming up that fits our professional development goal, to try and get us to, if we're available, right, to attend it. And because I know there's an extensive one for finance that I think too, what is that? Is that year 3, Gwen, of training, or is it 4?
It's
I think it's one of the last ones.
Gov 3.
Right.
Gov 3 is the finance component. However, excuse me, we now have internally, which is really very exciting, a BA in residence who is a former executive county superintendent as well as a long-serving business administrator who, believe me, can answer any finance question you have. answers me when I have a finance question. For things that are so obscure, I don't know, and there are still lots. I can always learn new things, and I do regularly. So he's someone who's available as a resource that we haven't had heretofore. So that, particularly in the area of finance, is someone that would be very beneficial for you all to have in to better understand, and will work, obviously, and can work in collaboration with Karen to help you better understand those financial reports and what does that look like and so forth and so on. So that's very doable, and I'm very excited to say that we have that now available. We always haven't had that available, but we do now. And so I'm very excited about that. So you could have a goal that the board would engage in professional development, and then if you can just articulate those specific areas that you're interested in, you know, you can plan for that, whether it's advocacy for public education, whether it's roles and responsibilities, ethics. That's a required piece on an annual basis. But beyond that, there are lots of other areas that you might be interested in, and it might be helpful and beneficial to the board.
That one, because we're a fairly green board. 5 new members last year, 4 new members this year. I like that one.
I think it's really helpful,
really
and we're happy to do that. That's what we're here for. We really are happy to help in that domain. So we're going to keep provide the supportive role in the district strategic plan that you carried for next year. And then if you want a goal that says the board will engage in professional development, you want to say quarterly? Do you want to say as needed? You can be as flexible here as you want.
Yeah, I'd say maybe the most quarterly, just because sometimes some of the training doesn't take place at the time that we want it to, but, you know, and then sometimes it takes us a bit of time to schedule you guys to come in and help us out.
Maybe we don't need a time element to it, but just to identify certain topics and then try to plan those out across the year whenever would make sense. Does that seem reasonable, or is that a bad idea?
Oh, it's a fine idea. You can do it however you like. Completely flexible on that.
I would imagine the board goals also have like the action plan component.
Right, you'll have to develop an action plan
I think that
for
goes hand
each
in
of
hand.
those, and you can then outline if you want. We don't have to do that right this moment, but you can outline through your committees, however you want to do that. Perhaps each committee can think about it, and if they have a topic that they think is germane and be helpful for all of the board to have more information around, like operations, clearly the budget documents and the finance pieces come out of that. But if there are other areas you want to explore in your committees, then you could just put those in your action plan.
Great.
Okay? Are you good with those 2 goals? 3.
I was going to say the 3, right? We're good with that.
I'm sorry, I misspoke, Dory.
Keeping the second one.
Yes, continuing the second one there. So here's it looks exactly identical for a board goal, the action plan, right? It's just these are what you're responsible for, okay? Okay. All right. I will get back to you with a memo on the goals you identified that you wish to have as district goals as well as board goals. And then I will send you blank action plans that you can copy so that you have those to be able to fill out. So again, I would encourage the board to make sure that you do that because absent an action plan, a goal without an action plan is a wish. Okay? And that's all it is. So you want to make sure that you have action plans for both the board goals, which you're responsible for. The administration will address the district goals. Anything else? Questions?
My question is totally for you guys. I know that when we were developing, it was during the budget, so it got a little crazy, but when we were doing the district goals on the action plan, you guys created an action plan for the board goals.
Yes.
You want to report? I know I'm talking about a year in review. Are you guys going to talk about that? You don't, I'm asking more for agenda development than anything.
Are you asking me specifically?
I'm asking
or-
I know, I'm asking everybody. The only reason I'm looking at you is somehow I thought the drive was,
No, well, we talked about it in policy, and we said,
you sent it to everybody, right?
no, I know, but I mean, like, we talked about if the board was going to report on it at our meetings in policy, but I don't know if anything came from that. I think the policy committee said that we would like for it to be reported on at
like I
meetings.
said, this Thursday is the last meeting of the year, right? You're voting on your new goals, so, and it was just you don't have to at all. It's just a question, because I'd put it on the agenda.
I'll just say for everyone, it looks like no one's thought about it, so.
I was going to say, that's fine. It was only when you were talking about the action plan and that made me think you did all that work, right? At the beginning.
I wanted to know, Gwen, if you could just go over, especially since we have a goal on there for the board to support in the 5-year strategic plan, if you could go over what the role and responsibility for the board is in that part so that there isn't confusion between what we do and then what is expected of the superintendent.
Or a facilitator, if you hire a facilitator.
Right.
Right. And typically, my answer to you is to encourage members of the public, all segments of the public, to come and participate, even if you have to pick them up in your car. You want wide, broad community participation, and you all have different constituencies, if you will, different groups of friends, different, you know, if you have kids in soccer or you have kids in lacrosse or you know, your children, there may be parents from there, whatever your particular soccer or maybe running parents or, you know, whatever it is that you in your community, your neighborhoods, you all live in different places in the community, you have different friends. So making sure that you get people to come out and fully participate in that strategic plan is really the role of the board. And communicating the value of here's an opportunity for your voice to be heard. We want to hear from you, please come. Encouraging and supporting that is really important, okay? And that's the appropriate role of the board. And then for you to come and participate, but not dominate, okay? Because this is the community's opportunity to be heard. You can listen, you can throw in an idea or two, but it's not for you to lead the process. You want to be there to be supportive of the district and to listen because it's an opportunity. You know, the one thing we hear from boards all the time is there's not enough opportunity to dialogue with the community, and this is really a wonderful opportunity to hear from the community and to be able to interact with them in a different setting than at a Board of Education meeting, which is constrained, of course, by your policy and the fact that a Board of Education meeting is a meeting in public. It's not a meeting with the public. But a strategic plan gives you that opportunity to interact with the community in a different way. So that is the appropriate role of the board.
And then, so it's our responsibility to interview and hire the facilitator. And then the facilitator kind of takes over, so to speak, and then sets up different opportunities to engage with the community to develop the 5-year strategic plan.
And your staff. I mean, with all the stakeholders in the educational process, not just the community members.
And the students.
Parents, staff members, students, to hear from all of those groups. You know, your students are the ultimate consumers of the process. And when we do strategic planning in districts, they have a wonderful perspective on strategic planning, and it's always so helpful to hear from the kids. And I don't mean just high school kids. I mean middle school kids as well, to hear from them, to hear their perspectives. So, there are different ways to get that input, but actually hearing from the kids is really helpful. And you'll be amazed at how articulate and smart they are when you least expect it.
So then after all that feedback is provided to us as a board,
Excuse me.
and then how is the plan actually created? Is it something that the board decides on, or are there other people involved?
Typically, the facilitator will develop an entire plan for the board. The board will adopt that plan. And then actually it makes goal setting easier because you can pull your annual goals right out of your strategic planning goals, right? And so it makes annual goal setting that much easier because, again, you will have strategic planning goals, and typically they'll be in 4 or 5 goal areas. It just depends on what the input and the outcomes are to that input. Typically, we're seeing in strategic plans the student experience, which is more inclusive than just curriculum and instruction, but includes SEL, health and wellness, co-curricular activities. It's looking at the whole totality of what the district does with their kids, and typically it's being called this, the student experience. There's always typically a finance and facilities goal in most strategic plans, and typically there's a communication, community engagement, partnership kind of goal that comes out of most strategic plans. And again, it just depends on your district, and there may be other things that I'm overlooking, but those typically are at least 3 of the main goal areas that districts tend to end up having a goal area around with specific objectives within each of those particular goal areas.
And Dory, in my experience, after you have that, like plan, goals, focus areas, whatever, it's called something different by everybody, but you have, say you have, just for sake of argument, 4 focus areas. It's been my experience that you have at least 1 board member, if not more than 1 board member, administrator, staff members, people who are interested, community members on each of those teams, right? Goal teams. And they participate also in working on those yearly action steps and presenting the progress on those goals. So it can be a really great, inclusive process. Again, you still need to decide how you want it to look, but I've always seen that level of engagement, like literally everybody engaged somehow.
And another way that many districts will do it is to invite everyone back every year that participated for the update on the progress made toward the strategic plan, whether it's given by the superintendent or the facilitator, however that's configured, and say, okay, is there anything that's changed? Is there anything that we think we need to add? Have circumstances changed? Like COVID changed everything, right? So a lot of strategic plans that were in place got put on hold, and when people came back to schools, they brought people back to say, okay, now what do we need to focus on in this first year back, because the world has changed from what we knew it to a whole different place. So, there are lots of advantages to it, and it is a wonderful opportunity. Your community will learn things about the district through interaction with other members of the staff, with members of the board, with members of the community that they might not ordinarily have an opportunity to sit with, to talk to. And so they will learn wonderful things about the district. And if you have kids there, they will learn wonderful things about the kids. It helps control in some way, rumor control around that big bad middle school. I'm kidding, but do you know what I'm saying? If you only have a child in early elementary and you hear things that well, maybe this happened at the middle school, and you're only hearing, you'll get to talk to middle school teachers as well as elementary teachers. So you'll learn all kinds of things, and that's the sort of intangible benefit that comes from strategic planning that you can't quantify, that I can't tell you, it happens 9 out of 10 times, but it happens a lot, and it's a wonderful piece to that strategic planning process.
And we have a district goal that's a strategic plan goal, and then we also have a board goal. So can you explain to us what the superintendent's role is in the strategic planning process as well? Because I think that since we're, it's a fairly new board, no one, I believe, on here has ever participated in the strategic plan as a board member. Some of us have participated as community members, just so that board members understand what to expect from our superintendent, and they don't have ideas that then they feel
Typically, your
disappointed.
superintendent will get put together an RFP and talk to, there are a whole host of different folks out there that do this process a little differently, again, not dramatically differently, but different component pieces, and looking at what works best for your community. We'll come back and make a recommendation to the board based on cost, based on what you're looking for, what are those important salient pieces, how much interaction does it include, when is it going to be held, what does it look like, what do they provide from various vendors of strategic planning, and make that recommendation to the board. The board can then review those RFPs, make a decision through discussion and collaboration as to which they think would be best in coordination and collaboration with your superintendent, and then you'd sign that person up and move forward. And I was saying,
Component of the interviews too.
yep, and I was saying to Phyllis a little earlier when we were talking about strategic planning, it is not a process to be started or begun in the summer, because people check out, right? They've gone to the beach mentally or physically, hopefully physically, but people need time off, right? So you don't want to have a strategic plan that's running through the summer or going through that time frame, again, just because you want everyone to participate, so you want your staff. I would tell you, if you were at impasse on bargaining, not a good time to do a strategic plan, because you want your staff to participate fully, right? Because they have a perspective that you can't possibly have, that parents don't have. They're with the children on a daily basis, so they have a much different perspective that you want to help inform your strategic plan. So, those are just some of the pieces that I think about for all of you, is that you really want to do it after school starts, not right in September when everyone's adjusting.
Although I do think if you're going to do the RFP and the interviews, you could do that in the
You can do that in the summer. I just meant the actual strategic planning process would not work in the summer.
Not at all.
That's all. Obviously, you can do that. It's a good time to do it because you want to be able to implement it. So, okay. All right. I wish you all a long stay at the beach, if not really, at least mentally.
I have a question.
Yes.
The next item, though, and I know it's not specific to you, but we have, again, a pretty new board. This year we did a narrative because it wasn't a full year of evaluation. I have to be honest, I haven't done the school board's evaluation in years. It's been because of whatever, COVID or whatever, hasn't been done. Has anybody done the school board's evaluation here? Any of us?
You mean for the CSA?
Yes.
To go through the whole,
Yeah.
July 1st to June
I've done it.
30th and all the evidence? It is a big difference than what we did this year.
It is a big difference. It is a big difference. But it is It has two pieces to it: progress toward achievement of district goals, which is what you focused on this year, and then it has the leadership skills. It's available online to do in the same way. I hit a button, it compiles automatically. I'm not in the process or the business of evaluating anybody's superintendent. I don't read it, I don't look at it. I simply hit a button, compile it, get it back to the board president, typically, is the one who accesses that. And from that, you write a summary report that reflects the majority voice, which is because it's the board speaking with one voice in the evaluation. And when the full board meets to review the evaluation with the superintendent, if there's a minority perspective on a particular piece of it, that's the board member's opportunity, if they have a different perspective than the majority, to be heard. And so it works in very much the same way as what you're doing this evening. This is just limited to the narrative on the goals.
Well, and the evidence on the leadership standards.
Yes.
'Cause there are a number of those standards.
6. We've condensed them.
Which is good,
6.
but it's still, just from an
Still.
evidentiary standpoint, it's a lot.
Are you asking that maybe we try to make that as part of some of our
That is
professional
your
development
next-
to help
I was
the
going to say,
the board understand?
The next item is choosing how I will be evaluated on these goals. I'm giving you one, the narrative you already know. I just wanted Gwen to be able to explain the school board's one. I think it's pretty common, even though I haven't been evaluated that way for a while.
It is pretty common. I will tell you right now, I'm in the process of, I would call it evaluation heck, because I'm compiling for 4 different counties just because of staff shortages right now. So I'm doing the compilations for 4 different counties, and it is very, very common in its usage across the state.
Just, again, before you left, I figured it'll be easier for people to come up with an idea, you know what it is.
Well, and each of the 6 standards, there are indicators. Those indicators build to the accomplishment of the standard. There's an opportunity for the superintendents to include in each of those standards evidence, indicators of evidence. Typically, those are links to documents that are on your server in your district. So it may be, you know, the demographer's report. It might be agendas from PD meetings, you know, as evidence that PD was undertaken in a particular area. And so that board members, while they're filling out the forms, can click on those links to remind them, because of course the evaluation is an annual evaluation. It's not just about 1 month or 2 months. It starts July 1 and it runs through typically the end of April. I mean, it can't run later than that or you won't hit the July 1 timeline, right,
Not
to
when-
get it accomplished, which is a CUSAC requirement. And you don't want to lose points on CUSAC for no reason. They're simple to get. Just finish it by the deadline, which you all have been really good about doing in previous years. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay. Great. Well, have a great summer. If you need anything, you know how to find me, because I'm not going to the beach all summer. So.
Now, it sounds like you're going to be at your desk.
You're welcome. My pleasure always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you're going to send the goals to Karen or Manny?
We'll send them to Manny and to you and to Karen so that you all have them for the agenda and for your meeting on Thursday. I will be doing this tomorrow. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay. All right. Have a good night.
Too.
Now you have evaluation of superintendent.
How do we do it?
That's up to you.
Okay, so this is my first time doing an evaluation of superintendent.
We go into executive session.
No, this is how you're going to evaluate me next year.
Oh.
So this year you had determined we were going to do this narrative. That's why I asked Gwen to explain what that one looked like, because you can just say, we're going to evaluate you on the school board document, and then I know that, because it literally starts July 1st, and it's a lot. Like, I'm telling you, it's like it's a lot for me, electronic now, not like a binder like it used to be. But it's fine, right? Like, I do all these standards anyway. You actually have to determine how you're going to evaluate. And you can say, we're going to do it like we did it this year, or you can say school boards, or I don't actually know what else there is. I've only had a narrative for the last 5 years, so.
I would prefer the full evaluation next year. It's a full year for you, and I think it would be good for the whole board to be able to go through that. And then, if the board next year decides that it's not necessary or they want to change something, they can. But I think it's beneficial for all the board members to be able to go through all the leadership standards and to see what evidence is provided by the superintendent to support, accomplishing, those things for a certain rating. So that would be my opinion on it.
When does this take place?
It usually, whoever the president is next year, how we've done it is you have a conversation with the superintendent to find out when they're going to upload all of their artifacts for each one of those things.
It's right after the budget. It's
Right. It's
actually
usually like April, May, right, early. And then we start looking, once the superintendent has uploaded everything, then Gwen releases it to us so we can all see it. There's a certain time frame that we're given. And then we have, it's kind of the same setup as this one, except we have a little bit more time to read through everything and to talk to each other in executive sessions about it and work on the document. So it's, we all followed the same idea. It's just much longer document and it's a longer period of time that we get, so.
Got it. We didn't go through this with George because at that time, George was leaving when I got here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he still had to be evaluated under CUSAC. He still would have had to have submit his evaluation by June 30th. If you didn't, we won't get those points. Saying.
I don't remember doing that. Yeah.
I don't think we did. I think he
I remember
left.
asking about it. You did.
I can't
Yeah.
think about it now, but,
I
okay.
think he left before.
It is a yearly requirement to complete it by July 1st.
And then we had interims, so then they just, right, you don't I mean, even though I think one was willing, but it's an interim, and then when you came, it's just kind of, so I don't think the board submitted one last year.
Okay, well, I'm gonna la that right now for this moment.
Even though we're on the record. Any other suggestions on how we should do this?
I get that it's extensive, but I agree that it would be nice for the board to see because we are all so new.
Yeah, and that's why I asked the
Leadership.
question.
Just
Yeah,
Phyllis?
I think it's fine. I think it's a very good idea.
I just need to know for me, because it's literally starts July 1st.
Anthony?
Yeah, I think the NJSBA format's a fine way to do it.
Agreed.
All in favor?
There you go. You need to vote. Is it like a formal vote? Do you know? I don't know.
I guess let's do it anyway, right?
I just
Ms. Karen Bishop Johnson, roll call, please.
Cannot hurt.
Can't hurt.
Cannot hurt. Okay, Mrs. Agliaro?
yes. I assume we're voting on doing the NJSBA.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Sounds like it.
We don't actually have
Should
a motion.
clarify.
You need a motion and a
So
second.
moved.
Okay,
That'll help.
motion, so moved. Okay.
Yeah, second.
What do you
I make a
Motion. I
motion to
motion.
use the NJSBA full superintendent evaluation process.
24, 25.
Second.
There you go.
Thanks, guys. It's a village, right?
Takes a village.
All right.
425, and that was Danielle, second. Okay, back to the roll call. Start over. Mrs. Agliaro,
Yes.
Mr. Frage,
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Duet,
Yes,
Mrs. Santos,
Yes.
Dr. Vinces Kua,
Yes.
Mr. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mrs. Amadeo.
Yes.
All yes, motion passes.
Okay, great.
So you all better just, get reelected. We're sitting here at this time next year.
There you go.
All right, awesome.
Now you can go to your.
So at this time, we would move to comments of the public, seeing that there's no members of the public. We're going,
You still have to read
still
it.
have to read it?
There's nobody here.
We welcome input from the public. There are 2 times during the meeting when the public is invited to speak. The first opportunity to comment on the agenda items only is now. The second opportunity for the public comments is towards the end of the meeting. Total time allotted for public comments is 30 minutes. Before you make your comments, please state your name, municipality of residence, and if you're representing an organization. In the event it appears the public comments portion meeting may exceed 30 minutes, the presiding officer may limit each statement made by the participant to 3 minutes duration. Our public forums are not structured as a question and answer session, but rather are offered as opportunities to share input with the board. In instances where the board feels response is needed, the presiding officer or superintendent will address the comments. New Jersey statutes do not permit the board to discuss personnel or hiring in public sessions. Name of students should not be used. Members of the public should consider their comments in light of legal rights of those affected and identified in their comments, and be aware that they are personally legally responsible with potential liability for the comments that they make to the board. The board shall not be held liable for comments made by the public. Okay, so now we're going to move on to executive session. The item of discussion is specific, prospective, or current employees, unless all who could be affected request an open session.
Anybody first?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Okay.
Aye.
So should we just turn off the mics and stay here?
No, Aaron, you can't. But Aaron can put you into closed session. Remember, I'm not going to be, I'm not there. You go into your room. Karen's not there. Somebody's going to have to, when you come out, record the time and the motion to come back into open.
Okay.
That's fine.
Shall we turn?
Just take the start time and then the end time.
Okay.
And who is motioning to come back in and out, okay?
Okay.
That's all you have to do.
So we got to come out of executive session?
You did, right?
We did.
Yeah.
You're out.
Okay.
Now you're up to
Business.
board
business.
business.
Okay, so at this time, we're going to move on to board business. I believe there's something that we wanted to,
Yeah, I'll say it. I would like to discuss the strategic plan and what steps need to happen next over the next month or two to make sure that we are on track to start planning come September.
I know I saw in the committee reports that Mo is supposed to put RFP on the July agenda. That's one important
so that's-
thing. But you have to know, do we know at all what you are hoping for? Because you have to actually, when you put out the RFP for a strategic plan, you'll get a wide, right? Like Gwen said, you could get, a firm that wants to charge $150,000 and a firm that'll do it all for $25,000.
Do we have budget set aside for this?
I wouldn't say you have $150,000. We're trading out, we haven't received our grant allocations, the title grants. Right now, everything is budgeted in the general budget. So the idea was that when we get those allocations, and they're late, they usually come by now, we could look at that and see what things we may have budgeted that could be paid for out of Title 1, 2, or 3. That's not, I don't know that, in all honesty, as somebody who do get paid to do this, you don't need to spend 100.
So you're suggesting that the board comes up with the scope of what we're looking for? Is it for the RFP, or can you just put the RFP out and then we get companies to come in and then we can see what they offer and then decide from there?
Combination, right? You could do it that way, but then you're going to get some of those $150,000, right? You're just going to, because there's no scope. But if you put out an RFP that said you're looking for a facilitator for, I always call it a town hall, but Gwen called it, focus groups, whatever you want to call it. We want somebody to facilitate that, come to the goals, bring us to those committees, right? The committees that are going to do those action steps. Or maybe you want somebody who's going to do that whole thing, which will typically cost more. That's what I'm asking. We don't have unlimited funds, right? I think you have to have a facility. Phyllis and I talked about this in committee. I don't think you can preach in your own church. I think you want somebody to come and run it, but you have to decide what do you want 5 town halls? Do you want, what is it that you're hoping for?
Well, I guess we can discuss that, and then from what I remember us experiencing before was they came with us with that, but then also explained to us the different tiers that they offer. So even if they come in at a lot, it doesn't mean that that's the package that you
I'm
have
just
to
saying
pick.
you have to be ready then to say, what can we do? If you're going to facilitate the, focus groups and get us to focus areas and goals, then what are we going to take on, right? If you're at those different tiers. I just want you to be able to think it,
Okay, so the first step is to do
an RFP.
an RFP. Once we get that RFP, then we decide exactly, like, based on pricing and stuff, exactly what we do.
Who you want to interview.
Yeah, who we want to interview, and then from their scope of work, or based on their packages, and then we just go from there, correct?
Yes.
And we can
You're
spread
going to have
that
a
out.
wide range.
Yeah.
We can spread that out over July and August, right?
Well, you don't have a
Yeah, we don't have-
committee until July, so do you have to have a board resolution to put out an RFP? Do you know? I don't. We might have to ask that question.
Do we need to, we could just, we obviously want you guys to do that. Somebody could just make a motion and say.
So I make
I
them,
don't think.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I don't.
Hold
think we
on.
have to.
Even if we
Yeah.
don't
Then it
need
would
it,
also
but
give-
we do it,
Yeah.
Right.
who cares, right?
I make a motion that if we need to,
You give us the authority
yeah,
to
we
do
give
an
you the
RFP.
authority to do an RFP based on the,
Yeah, I don't think.
I second it.
We have to do that.
Based on the
There you
strategic
go.
plan.
But I know we
got
have
it.
to do
You
an
have a
RFP
first and
correctly.
second.
Did you? No, okay.
I'll just say that I think the last time we were close to moving ahead with it, before some of the administrative changes, that we were under $10,000 for the
Yeah, we
cost
were
of it. So I
under
know that
10,000.
it could go up and up from there, but I think
It's amazing, because I literally am meeting tomorrow with our elementary group, and last week I met with the regional group, and 2 groups are out for RFP currently, and they shared 25,000 was the lowest quote that they got, just for sake of
Maybe
conversation.
could bring to the ops committee the budget range that we have available.
Yeah, we're waiting, that, remember, we haven't gotten our allocations,
When you
so
have
we
that,
don't know.
when you have that, yeah, that can.
But even, I mean, it's over the summer. Even if all of the places can't come at the
no,
same
they would-
time, we can set different appointments.
Oh, no,
up,
that's not what I
right?
meant. I meant you still, when you put out the RFP, so you're asking for a request for proposals. You have to be ready, right, for people to bid on your proposal, right? And then after they bid, and you figure out, what it is that you really want, then you would interview. You have to, you put it out, you put it out for a bid the same way we did, like, for the roofs or anything else, I guess is my point.
And then do we have to interview the companies at the board meeting, or can we
you can
interview,
interview
like, and does it have to be the whole board, or is the
That's up
board
to
want
you.
it to just be the operations committee, or what?
That's up to you.
Seems
I
like-
don't know.
I would
do you
be,
guys
I would be
wanna
up
do?
for the operations committee doing it so that it gets done quicker, and then providing us with options that we could then vote on and details. But
There is definitely advertising requirements, there's a certain amount of time it has to be posted. It's long.
And I
Long,
do,
it's not 2 days.
when you're putting something out for bid, right? You obviously, the easy part is saying, yes, we want a strategic plan, right? But now, that specific outcomes, we want town halls, we want a survey, we want, what is it
Yeah,
that
let's
you're
do it all.
hoping for?
I mean, it's hard to say without having been through it before. I would really want someone like to tell me, here's what you should ideally do. Here's what that will cost. Here's a.
I mean, I
I think we should have multiple town halls and
yeah, and focus groups
I do too.
and
I do
surveys
too,
and
but
yeah, and
because some people won't come to a town hall, but they'll take a survey. So, and I like the idea of them, combining everything, putting
focus
it all
group.
together for us.
No, you have to do it all. I mean, you'll see. You'll do it all.
Yeah.
And we'll have to do, just to be fully honest, you can't expect everybody to come to us. They won't. You'll have to go out to them.
That would be more of the focus groups of them
Right, but
reaching
that
out.
costs every time they
Right.
come.
No,
costs.
yeah, I know. No one works
That's
for
why I
free.
asked, what are we, and I'll include all of us, what are we willing to facilitate versus, something else?
what do you mean we willing to facilitate? We can
What
do
are
it.
we willing to pay?
So,
what are we
so
willing to pay?
you have, as part of your package, you have 3 town halls on a survey, just sake of argument. I have absolutely no idea
Right.
what people do. But we decide we also want a Zoom town hall and another one. We can just do that. You just have to be prepared to do it.
But I thought you said we shouldn't. What was your statement?
You want a facilitator, yes, but that person's going to structure everything. That you want somebody outside to structure it and to manage it.
We could run some aspects of it
Sure.
ourselves. Okay.
Because otherwise, I don't, to do everything, I'm amazed.
And also, too, to combine, if we ran something on our own, I mean, then we'd have to provide all that feedback to the facilitator anyway, so why just not have them do it, right? Oh, yes, I
I think we have
understand
to know how
that.
much there is to spend.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
So-
You're down to really what is it, but you don't need to necessarily know that to put out the RFP.
Okay.
You need to know that when you're deciding who you're going to hire, right? So I wouldn't wait, because those allocations
But
haven't come.
but you say you need more information on what we want to do, right?
Well, I think, and again, this is going to be for Karen, not for me, because when we wrote like the ads for the roof bids, just to give you an idea, it's varies, we want this, we want, so maybe it says specific, maybe it's not, we want town halls, we want a survey, we want a complete set of focus areas. Do you know what I'm saying? You want
The
the
scope
whole.
of service. You
Right.
want to break down exactly what we are seeking in this kind of consultation service.
It does sound like you want to have people bid everything and then peel back. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, if it's possible to do it that way, I'm not opposed to that.
I don't know.
I think we should put maybe a limit on what that should be.
I think so, just because, as Danielle said, since it's a fairly new board, they might not necessarily know all the options that are available for a lot of these companies.
Okay.
So they might see certain things where, like, oh, I didn't know we could do that during the strategic plan part of this. So that's interesting. That would be great to do. So, and then we just have to figure out, scale it back to figure
I
out.
also would not put a limit on it just because we don't know what our limit is currently.
Well,
So it's,
the RFP wouldn't go out until we know our limit, right? Until we have.
You
that.
don't need to know your limit.
Yeah,
Just put out the
exactly.
RFP.
Okay, fine.
But
so
you,
we
you
could
don't
get it done
want
faster
to
just by doing that.
commit to any, right? You don't want to like get your.
I don't want all the bids to be astronomical and then none of them are relevant to us.
Doesn't, so they're going to bid,
Definitely again.
people that do this.
Okay.
Exactly.
You might get like some like corporate executive kind of strategic planners, but for the most part, you're going to get, I hate to say the same players, that doesn't seem very nice, but you're going to get school boards, you're going to get HYA, you're going to get the universities. And I understand John Comegno has a strategic planning group.
Okay.
Right? And I hear, those are the names I hear, right? The different universities, the school boards, obviously, that's a big one. And there are private, there's like individuals that do it too.
Great.
So then, is everyone okay with Danielle's suggestion of just having the operations committee weed through everybody? Or does the whole board want to be a part of interviewing everyone?
Operations, fine.
I think
With operation.
it would be good to have operations choose maybe 2 or 3 people and then have them come present so that the entire board gets to vote on like what they actually see.
If you type strategic into the Google Drive for board agenda packets, you'll see what we had from NJSBA and Keene University last time. And that gives you a good idea. But I think it was done in the operations committee last time where they emailed these materials to everyone, to the full board to review these proposals or these brochures for the services. And then maybe not for the interviewing and finalizing of a proposal, but that might have just been in committee. But the documentation they provide gives a pretty good listing of the services that how they work with you and that kind of thing.
I think that makes sense, Mo. So are we
And-
voting?
Yeah, we have to vote on,
That was our discussion.
That was our discussion, so now we have to vote. Karen,
and this was just to approve
the
if we needed
RFP.
if we needed an approval for the RFP.
Authorize
Just
Karen
just in
to put
case.
out an RFP.
I'll write it down. I don't think we do, but I think what you do have to, when you choose in order to advertise, then we need
That's what they want, though.
To
They want
advertise.
They're ready, if we are ready, they want you to advertise.
Motion.
We did the motion
we already
and
did
the
the motion.
second, and now we discussed, and now we're going to vote.
Now it's roll call.
I did not come with enough roll calls today. Mrs. Agliaro,
Yes.
Mrs. Amadeo,
Yes.
Mr. Frage,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Mrs. Harvey,
Yes.
Mr. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mrs. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Santos,
Yes.
Dr. Vince's Kua. Motion passes.
Okay. This time, we're going to move on to comments from the public. Seeing that there is no public members here to make comments, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any conversation? Okay, great. Thank you.